Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about Solana because essentially the main thing that I think a lot of people are looking for this next cycle is like, what is the chain that can really kind of bring scale to crypto, right? And I think Solana recently has kind of caught a lot of attention as potentially being the one that has the kind of the most realistic possibility of doing that. Ethereum's another one that's kind of been working hard toward it. Sui's another that's caught a lot of steam recently. We got Caspa, Say, Aptos. There's a lot of those that have come up recently, but Solana is one that I wanted to focus on just because that is one that has already kind of been tested. It's a little bit battle tested. It's made it through a bear market. It's seen a lot of progression and growth over the past several years. And so I would say like it's got the history and it's got the momentum that it could essentially like really deliver on this, where some of these others I think are going to be a little bit more speculative. They could potentially deliver better, but there's kind of a sense, or there's a saying within crypto that sometimes the lack of a product is actually a better thing, just because it allows people to speculate a little bit more freely. And while that's fine for speculation, that's not really useful in terms of like actually delivering like the desired end outcome to the crypto space, right? And so that's kind of why I wanted to focus on Solana, is because there's less to speculate on there, right? There's more that we know, there's more that we can see. They have a track record. We can see a lot of different things kind of as they are unfolding within that Solana ecosystem. So anyway, let's go ahead, dive right in, talk a little bit about a couple of different things. First off, starting with crypto bubbles, we can see Solana is here up 2% for the day, but overall the market has been pretty strong in terms of its bounce. We can see, again, meme coins, pretty usual, kind of leading the way up. Fetch has done pretty well. AI tokens are kind of starting to make a little bit of a comeback, but ultimately, we can see Mog, Pepe, Doge, Shib, Ape, Popcat, Bonk with like basically like a lot of the larger winners here are in fact meme coins. But that aside, like it's still a strong move up in the market, as we can see, right? Like almost everything has kind of moved up. There's a couple here that that are showing red, but overall the market's seen a pretty strong move to the upside. Also, one thing that we can see here is there are a decent amount of like Solana tokens that we see kind of on this main crypto bubble screen, which is good to kind of show the value of the Solana ecosystem kind of building out and continue to kind of accrue value. And what we can see looking at the chart here is over the past, basically like since the beginning of March, when Bitcoin's been sitting in its downtrend and when altcoins have continued to get kind of wrecked ever since, like I would say probably the end of March, it's been kind of like down only for most everything. What we can see from Solana is it obviously did kind of pull back a decent chunk, but it's been kind of sitting within this like 130 to like 200 over here, but really more like the 130 to 185 range, and it's kind of ranged pretty nicely over the past couple months, staying relatively even. What we could see, like with Bitcoin, is it was in like a descending channel. Ethereum's kind of just been down only. Like, there's been a lot of alts that have not done particularly well. So given kind of the market environment that we've seen, Solana, in my opinion, has done pretty fantastic, right? And if we look even before then, we can see this massive run up that we saw, kind of recovering. This was kind of the height of, or I guess the depths of the 2023 bear market. This was after FTX. This was after Luna. This was after BlockFi and Celsius and all these like, different pretty high profile bankruptcies. FTX did hold a ton of Solana, so there was a massive concern that Solana could, potentially, be some collateral damage in there. What we could see is, we saw, I think, prices as low as like sub $10 down in this range. Obviously, like knowing what we know now, one of the best trades you could have possibly made was right in here, kind of at like peak fear. Obviously, hindsight's always 2020, but regardless, like we've kind of seen that this has been a pretty strong move to the upside, and it hasn't given back all its gains like a lot of these altcoins have seen. Like it's held pretty strong, and honestly, with like this level of consolidation, like we could potentially like be seeing a somewhat equivalent move to the upside. Another thing I wanted to take a look at is the open interest, because on Solana, we've seen a pretty massive like explosion of open interest. So the total crypto market is sitting currently at like, about 70 billion. We have seen kind of some drops from recent numbers. This is probably people just deleveraging due to a lot of the like volatility factors that we're seeing within the wider market right now. Today is the day of the US election, so at least that one will kind of go away. But the Middle East issue still kind of remains. The China economic issue still remains. That one, it seems like we're going to have clarity on like Wednesday or Thursday potentially. That's that'll be another thing that could potentially go away. I don't know, like that's I mean, China's economic problems are probably not just going to get solved. So I doubt it's going to go away per se, but it could at least provide some clarity on how the Chinese government plans on addressing it, which is something that I think would kind of reduce some volatility concerns. But anyway, going back to Solana specifically, we can see over the past, what is this, August 1st, 2023. So like past 15 months or so, we've seen open interest basically 10x. Which obviously is very nice. As we've seen price kind of consolidate here, we have seen a slight trend to the upside in terms of open interest. It's not super extreme, but we have definitely seen kind of a slight trend. Also looking at volume, we can see particularly kind of towards the beginning of this chart, volume has gone up a pretty decent amount. Obviously highest volume is kind of in this like February to April range. This is when there was, a ton of like meme coins going off on Solana and a ton of popularity kind of going on there. Other than that though, like, kind of the base level of volatility is still up pretty massive from what we've seen back here, which is, I would say, overall a generally good sign of kind of the health of the Solana ecosystem, people kind of drawing more eyes to Solana, a lot of that type of stuff. We do have some stats that we will go over that kind of talk about this a little bit further. Moving back to the chart, we can see, kind of with the open interest that we've seen, we have seen, kind of the holding or like the floors being held for the chart that we are seeing currently, which is nice. This is, I think, probably a pretty good sign, because as we start to see some breaks from this all-time high, here, let me get rid of this. As we start to see some breaks from out of these all-time highs, there's going to be a lot more open interest kind of involved within the ecosystem, much more than what we saw down here. And so because of that, we should see probably a lot more forceful break to the upside once we actually are able to kind of clear this. Like I've said prior, this is always kind of like a zone, right? So I don't imagine that we'll just kind of smash right through it. We'll probably hit a decent bit of resistance. I'm kind of trying to get through here. But once we are through, I would imagine this provides a decent level of velocity on the way up. And open interest is something that will continue to kind of benefit this on the upside. Also, as you can see, we do use Margex for a lot of our charting here. If you are interested, Margex does require no KYC and no VPN to do up to 100x leverage trading. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can feel free to just get signed up and get started. They don't require, like as I said, no KYC or VPN, and you also get up to $10,000 in deposit bonuses. So if that's something you're interested, feel free to check out the link in my description. I also do have a link in the description for BTCC. That's more of I guess you could say like a traditional exchange, where Margex is more like kind of leverage only. So if you are looking for a good place to trade spot, they also do leverage. They actually do higher leverage than Margex, which is kind of nice. But Margex is nice because of the no KYC and no VPN. Also, BTCC does do tokenized securities and like stocks, so like Apple, Nvidia, those types of things, which I think is really cool and probably one of the coolest things that I've seen within like a crypto exchange. So anyway, if you are interested in any of those, I do have them in the link in the description below. Just feel free to go on ahead and get signed up. And so one thing I want to take a quick look at is the Solana Analytics, because what we can see is, like, especially even if we go back all time, like the Solana ecosystem has really done quite well in terms of like onboarding new people and like building out an ecosystem that is vibrant and thriving and like has a lot of like interesting things going on. We can see the same thing with like new Solana tokens. I mean, tons of new Solana tokens coming in constantly, lots of new NFTs. Like part of this is just the accessibility of the network, right? Like fees on Solana are very, very cheap. They're basically a non-factor, where if the second you go on Ethereum, like fees are very much like a consideration, right? Especially if gas fees are high and you want to go put $10 into a meme coin, you're probably paying $10 to do it. Where on Solana, it's like if you want to put $10 into a meme coin, like whatever, because the fees are going to be like a tenth of a cent or sometimes even less than that, right? And so, the accessibility of the Solana network, I think, is what's made it so accessible and so successful so far, is just because there's been so many people who moved to Solana because it's just easier to do stuff. And so that's one thing that I wanted to focus on in this video particularly, is because it's done well, right? Like if you look at transactions and we kind of look at like the network and how the network's done, like it's gone like a general trend to the upside. It's kind of stayed more flat for 2024 so far, but like a general trend to the upside. If we look at like gas fees, gas fees have gone up, which again, like they're not expensive. Like they haven't run into like the Ethereum problem yet, but what we can see is like there's a lot more essentially fees being generated by the network, which does contribute to the health of the overall network. And so generally the best way to like increase fees without increasing like the I guess unaffordability on the network is just to increase transactions per second, right? If you've got more transactions going through and you're charging the same amount of money, like obviously the fees are going to continue to go up. And so I think that's kind of really Solana's like expansion, or like its angle to win from. As we've seen, particularly in my video that I did yesterday, Solana, I think, still does leave a little bit to be desired as far as transactions per second are concerned. We can see 3,200 here, but if we look at the percentage of vote versus non-vote, we can see, like, I would say like the vast majority of these are still vote transactions, and so they're not necessarily like real transactions per se, right? Over 75% of them are still voting transactions. So, you can look at this how you want. I personally really only like to look at non-vote transactions because that's kind of like the real transactions per second, if you ask me. We're sitting, if it's a quarter, we're probably sitting at like 800 transactions per second, which is similar to the chart that I showed yesterday, which showed ICP being kind of well ahead of all other blockchains. But overall, like considering kind of some of the more mainstream blockchains, again, we discussed this yesterday, is how ICP seems to be vastly overlooked kind of within the general crypto community. Looking at this kind of through a more like subjective lens of like, let's just exclude ICP because the overall market doesn't really consider it, which again, I think is completely wrong. But just going under that assumption, like Solana does kind of look to be the project that is doing the best, because if we look at, we'll actually just head back to this chart that I looked at yesterday. So looking at this chart, what we can see is Solana is very clearly kind of in second place. I did mention yesterday that Sui is not included in this chart, so I would imagine Sui is probably the only one that's going to be comparable to Solana. From what it seems based on some of my research, it's somewhere in this range. Whether it's second or third, I don't know for sure, but it's probably going to be fairly comparable to this like 700, 800, 900 transactions per second range. That kind of seems to be the consensus overall. But if we look kind of like, obviously ICP is number one, and it's really not even that close. But after that, like, I mean, this gets halved, and then like this goes down to like a third, and then these are all like kind of pretty comparable, and then we drop again, and then these are all kind of pretty comparable, and then we start to drop into like some of these layer ones, and then we get like really slow to points where it's like you couldn't really ever do anything at speed here, right? And technically, like, none of these can really do like internet level speed yet. But obviously, like, based on what we're seeing here, there are some who are definitely like a lot closer than others. So overall, I would say the Solana ecosystem is looking really good. I definitely am like quite bullish on how it's going to perform. I would say, like, just based on what I'm seeing as far as like risk to reward, I would probably put Solana as probably like my number one. I just think as far as like the amount that it's going to make and kind of the like level of certainty that I have that it's going to make that amount, that is why I would put it in kind of the number one position. Sui may do better from like a pure like percentage return. I think Sui's probably the one that I would put as my number one from like a pure percentage return perspective. But I have made a couple videos in the past as to some of the issues that I have with Sui and why I think it could be somewhat problematic. Maybe not necessarily in the bull run, but coming immediately out of it, I think people will figure out pretty quickly why that was probably not a great idea to hold that through the bear market. But otherwise, like, I think Solana is really well positioned to do quite well. And this is the first project that I've seen that kind of has the momentum and possible belief that like it could in fact be the ETH killer. Again, I do think ICP probably should have that title, but there's not that belief in the market, right? And if the market doesn't believe it, then it's not true. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. I do think that can change, but so far I would probably put Solana as kind of like my highest conviction in terms of like risk reward. That to me seems kind of to be the easiest bet at this point in time. I do think Ethereum will continue to perform well. I think the Bitcoin ecosystem, I think honestly that's probably going to do incredibly well. As far as like total returns are concerned from like a major ecosystem, I probably would put Bitcoin as my number one. But overall, just kind of all things considered, risk, return, narratives, the likelihoods of each playing out, all of that type of stuff, Solana still just, it seems like maybe it might be a little difficult to beat with any other type of investment. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out, especially getting pushed further on into the YouTube algorithm, all that type of stuff. Also, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, please feel free to drop me a comment I do try to read and respond to all of them. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd probably be the best way to do it. Also, I do have those Margex and BTCC links in my description. If you are trying to get set up with like an exchange where you can do leverage trading or spot trading or anything like that type of stuff, both of those are in the description as well. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.